Thank you, Zaya. That was so beautiful. So we're coming to the close of the book of John, even though we're still somehow in the middle. Thus far, we've watched John kind of explode with enthusiasm as he announces that Jesus is God who revealed love and faithfulness. We saw that Jesus is active, light, a courageous liberator, the resurrection, the good shepherd, and today we find ourselves in those familiar words of our Sunday school teachers: Jesus is the way. I wonder what comes to mind when you hear those words. An invitation or a restriction, a gate opened or a boundary placed, a destination or a journey. In John 13 and 14, we find Jesus deep into his final words to the disciples prior to his imminent arrest. They've just finished the meal together that we now note as the Last Supper. Jesus has washed the disciples' feet, and Judas has been called out as a betrayer. And Jesus says everything that must be said as he closes off his final words. Right up to this point, the disciples still wonder if Jesus could be the Messiah. They still wonder if Jesus is sent from God, if Jesus will turn out to be a hero, if the Messiah that they imagined. They still wonder, who is Jesus? Who is this man? And is he for us? Is he worth following? Will he change us? Will he hurt us? And as they wonder within themselves, Jesus harkens back to the early days of ministry as he called the disciples one by one, saying, "Come and follow me." Now, as Jesus is hours from being arrested and having just watched one he called beloved exit the room, Judas, to do the unthinkable act of betrayal, Jesus seems to see the need to remind those remaining that the early call to follow him was always intended to inform what it means to be loved and to be love. And it is love, the very essence of God, thus the very essence of him, that he wants to be the disciples' greatest descriptor. He wants them to be described as love. When they see him face to face, when they see him face to face, he wants them to see themselves as love. He wants them to be known for love when he has just been exalted in the streets with palm branches and overcoats. He wants them titled as love when he is arrested. He wants them known as love when he's in the tomb, when he rises again, when he ascends, and when the Spirit rests upon them. At each phase, this is who he has formed them to be. And this is who he desires they will continue to be: love. Thus, these words are intended to be an exclamation point. Love well as I have loved you. This is how people will know you are my disciples. This is how people will know that you have encountered me, that you have been shaped by me, that you've been formed by me, and somehow reborn because of me. To be called my disciple should immediately find you called one who is loved and one who is love. Now, these would be stirring words, but what the disciples hear, all that they seem to remember, all that they seem to take away from this rousing invitation is that Jesus is going. All they recall is that Jesus is leaving. And you can almost feel and hear their hearts race, their questions form, their confusion increase when they ask, "Where are you going? Why can't we join you?" Peter jumps in and ironically says, "I will follow you even unto death." But Jesus knows that in a few moments, all of their loyalty will melt away. All of their devotion is going to vanish and wisp upwards like tendrils of smoke. But even their fragility is not enough for Jesus to walk away. It's not enough for Jesus to dismiss or even to correct them. Instead, he seems to say, "I still want you to know who I am. I still want you to know me. I still long for you to recognize who I am. So if you trust God, then you trust me. What the Father has, I have. What the Father builds, I build. What I am building is for you. And you will take what I have built to the world." But their confusion is palatable, innocent, and you can even hear the frustration from Thomas, who just wants things to be made clear. As he says, "You think we know the way, but we don't. Just tell us." Jesus responds to Thomas's innocent insistence and gently reminds him that everything he needs to know can be found in the very one that Thomas was called to follow 3 years earlier. Jesus says, "It's me. I am the way. No one comes to the Father except through me." And somehow we took these beautiful words and insisted that they must be a closed door. We insisted they must be some kind of sign of supremacy, a reminder that not all can belong, not all can be included. But was Jesus simply referring to orthodoxy? Was he simply talking about some kind of pathway to heaven? Was he offering a threat, or was he offering an invitation? Diana Butler Bass notes, Jesus uses these terms to explain how he embodies a way of being in the world, so close to the heart of God that God can be known in and through Jesus. I am the way, and not one of you, my fearful friends, knows God apart from what I have embodied for you. Stay close, keep faith. This is not a threat, it is a promise. The very walls that once held back God's presence are about to break, and through the journey of self-giving love, Jesus is about to take mercy and justice will cover the earth. It could almost be surmised that we are invited into the way of the kingdom, the way of co-creating a new world, the way of the renewal of all things, the way of all things being made new, the way of hope, the way of love, the way that could not be except that the love of God has made a way. Jesus seems to say, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and except for my showing you the way, you'd have got lost. Now, the gospel shows us over and over again what this kind of lostness on the way to God looks like. Lostness in our search, in our seeking, lostness in our responding to the God who is present. A picture of what emerges is kind of what is presented throughout the gospels when we attempt to explain who God is and what God is like with religion versus Jesus, with parameters rather than Jesus, with exclusivity rather than Jesus, with ambition rather than Jesus, with dogma, with tradition, with rightness versus Jesus. What rises is what is described in 2 Timothy as having a form of godliness without power, or what is described in Corinthians as that which is nothing more than a resounding gong. Perhaps Jesus would explain how easy it is to lose our way apart from him with something like this: being more concerned with what you are offering, with when you are offering healing, than the healing itself. He might call that lostness those who malign those who respond to the move of the Spirit by calling it an allegiance to the devil. He might call that lostness insisting that the rules of the Sabbath are more important than the very people for whom the Sabbath was created. He might call that lostness those who would in one breath announce they are the righteous ones and in the very next plot to kill the one who is righteous. Jesus is the way and offers a way that is formed and shaped and infused by and defined as love. One author notes, when I say I am the way, the truth, and the life, I mean that the example I have lived among you shows you the best way to be human. I am the life, and the words I have spoken will help you know and understand God. I am the truth. It is less that I am opening some cosmic door that God is hiding behind, and more that my path in life should become your path. I am the way. Self-giving love are the pavement stones on the road to salvation. Jesus is the way. When we read the book of John, we see that Jesus is convinced that his acts of love will not just be mimicked by those who come after him, but will be multiplied by us. All great news, but only if we truly understand what we ought to multiply. only if we truly understand the way of Jesus. The way that is led and infused by the Spirit, the way that accepts love as the highest ethic, the way to lean into the person and teachings of Jesus, even when it seems unbelievable to pray for our enemies, unbelievable to turn the other cheek, unbelievable to help the one who oppresses you, unbelievable to stand next to lepers, to defy tradition, to stand against religion, to willingly walk down paths and streets and highways when the end is the cross. Jesus is the way. Will we walk in it? Jesus is the way. Will we be transformed by it? Jesus is the way. Will we be defined by it? And what will change because of it? What will change around us? What will change in our communities and in our churches? What will be created? What will flourish? What will thrive? What will be torn down? What will rise up? Because He is the way. He is our way. Because Jesus is who we embody. Now, for many, the claim that Jesus is the way holds this sense of arrogance. And it's so challenging because it is so specific. And perhaps some of our difficulty with this is because of all of the ways that the church has maligned and distorted what the way means. Perhaps we too, like the disciples, find ourselves fearful that we aren't quite sure where Jesus is going. And so then we vainly attempt to carve out a way forward that feels safe for us, that feels inclusive of the ones who are like us, that helps us to think deeply about the ways to protect everything that we have understood up to this point about who God is. But we want to hold on so tightly to the things that are familiar that we find ourselves moving away from Jesus as the way into putting ourselves as the way forward. And so, to be ones who are known by and who participate in God's love, that is when we find ourselves emulating what it looks like to be a part of Jesus is the way. And recognizing that anything less than that leaves us incapable of announcing with any kind of authenticity and any kind of courage and any kind of truthfulness that Jesus is the actual way. We cannot speak this to our friends and to our neighbors when we still hold on to all of the forms and all of the rules and all of the rights and all of the things that we must check off. If we cannot stand close and near and tight to this idea that Jesus' greatest invitation to us was to say, "You must be love as I was love to you." N.T. Wright encourages us not to lose sight of the vision that Jesus seemed to put before us. He says, don't come with a set fixed idea of who God is and try to fit Jesus into it. Look at Jesus, the Jesus who wept at the tomb of his friend, the Jesus who washed his followers' feet, and you'll see who is the true God. That was Jesus' answer to Philip. And it is his answer to the natural questions that arise in our minds today. Only when his followers are themselves continuing to do what Jesus did, may they be believed when they speak the earth-shattering truth that Jesus spoke. I'm going to ask the worship team to come forward. We've been wondering, Jesus who? And we've said Jesus is God, revealing love and faithfulness. Jesus is active in our world. Jesus is the light. Jesus is our courageous liberator. Jesus is the resurrection. Jesus is the good shepherd. And today we say, Jesus is the way. Let's stand together.